Ladies and gentlemen, for a session sponsored by Visa, please welcome Senior Vice President, Strategy, Marketing, and SMB Solutions, Global Digital Merchant Products, Visa, Michelle Herron, in discussion with Skift X Research Editor, Jeremy Cressman.
Everyone. So in today's session, we're actually going to talk about building the frictionless future of travel. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of travel experiences that we now take for granted. You know, things like seamlessly moving across borders, making purchases wherever and whenever we want, getting trip experiences customized to our unique needs. But I think it's easy to forget that underneath all those frictionless experiences that we take for granted, there's a lot of infrastructure that helps make that happen. And a big piece of that infrastructure, of course, is payment technology, right? So we're lucky enough to have Michelle from Visa here with us today to talk more about how payment strategy helps make that frictionless world possible. So Michelle, welcome.
Thank you for having me here. It's my first time at Skift. I can already see what a fabulous event this is.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you, Michelle, why is payments such an important topic, particularly for travel?
Well, I think ultimately we're all here and we're all in business to sell something, whether that's a product or an experience, and you haven't sold something until it's paid for. And so I think the payments component cannot be ignored in terms of how relevant it is for the success of our businesses and the experience that the customer's having. So if I think about travel, what's really interesting to me about travel in specific is that there's so many things that are happening in terms of, first of all, just the average ticket size. These are expensive purchases that are happening, whether it's in a cruise or a hotel. This could be a family that saved all year, right, to pay for this experience. Yeah. And so the last thing you want to do is to make a horrible, awful moment of payment. Like when we think about payments in general, like you think about purchasing a car, which is something we've all done, right? And at the end, there's a lot of elation at the end. It can be fantastic. But has anyone ever stood back and said, but that moment when I paid, that was great? And so that's the challenge that Visa and CyberSource take very personally, is that we're looking at options to actually make the payments experience delightful, if you can really believe that. And then ultimately what I want to do is I want to make it embedded. I want to make it almost disappear into everything that you guys do.
Sure. I mean, you think about travel as a category, this has always been an industry that's been very much on the cutting edge, right? It was one of the first industries to sell their products online. But has anything changed in recent years that's made digital commerce more critical for travel?
Well, I think, and you're right. So when we think about e-commerce and digital commerce, we've seen travel on the forefront. And most, let's say, airline and hotel experiences, they really start on the computer and now the mobile device. And so that, to me, is what's changed, is the ubiquity and the opportunity to make those purchases and have those experiences everywhere. And so what we're seeing is a lot of really transformative experiences. So one example is, not just that moment at the beginning of the travel planning when you're making that purchase, but all throughout the journey now, there's opportunities for embedded payments. We work with International Airlines Group, which is the parent company for British Airways and many others. So what we've done is we've built an integrated in-flight experience where the mobile device can actually be pulled out of a consumer's pocket and they can interact with the in-flight entertainment system, do a Bluetooth connection, and then right there at the seat, they can, search for Netflix, sign up for Netflix and watch movies. They can actually purchase drinks, purchase food, and then that could be delivered right to the seat. And so contrast that with what we thought of as the historical experience of clunky payments devices and, issues with connectivity. And so the opportunity now to make that on demand when the consumer wants to pay, and really almost creating this moment where it's like, wow, that was cool. I mean, that I think is the transitional opportunity in everything we're doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, technology, the consumer technologies that's out there has gotten so slick, right? There's this expectation that payments should be the same way.
Exactly.
So you mentioned this airline experience, right? And that actually is a great segue, I think, and talk about ancillaries, right? These are the add-ons, right? You buy a flight, you can buy additional services. How is Visa supporting airlines or any travel company for that matter, hospitality, what have you, as they shift towards this focus on ancillaries as part of their revenue stream?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, we run a global payments technology platform that we enable lots of different technology partners to integrate into. And so that's truly our model, is that we see all of the amazing things that tech companies are doing. So just to name a few, we work with entities like Amadeus and Sabre, and they're creating value at the front of every transaction.
Yeah.
And what we do is we create that global platform that's stable, seamless, singular APIs, the ability to route to hundreds of countries, to get to hundreds of acquirers, alternative payment types, all of those things are in play. And so we sort of stand as that anchor to make all of that possible. And then what we enable these technology partners to do is like bring that amazing value to the front end, because we do understand that ancillary services and all of those incremental transactions that are occurring, again, I like to think of it really attached again to customer centricity. We've heard a lot about that this morning. And it's not about incremental charges, right? It's adding value to the consumer in every single opportunity,
right,
and making that payments, we call it a lot in our industry, the Uberization of payments.
Right.
Like when you think about Uber, super cool, right? Way better than a decade ago in the taxi experience. But payments, we believe, is the anchor. The ability to just walk out of the door and be done, like that is, I think, at the end of the day, the linchpin of what makes Uber fantastic.
Yeah, making it one click, make it as simple as possible. There's all these devices out there now, and we continue to add new things. There's smart home assistants, we've got smart watches, we've got digital kiosks anywhere you go, whether it's a lobby or the airport. How do you ensure that you have a payment system that feels sort of consistent and also responsive across all of that? Because it's a lot and it continues to get even more complex.
It is, and that's where I go back to that foundation of these, our technology platform and the APIs that we've built. So our system and our platform is really engineered for all of these different technology types now. So, and we think all the time about, I hate the term Internet of Things, but I am going to use it. So, the ability for almost everything in our lives now to be a payments device. I pay with my watch, I pay with my phone, and we're constantly working on innovations to push that further. And so at the end of the day, there's nuances that are happening in the technology formats to make sure that experience is consistent. And one example that I'll point to that's on the edge of travel, but when I think about transportation, if folks have kept up with what's happening in New York City and London as of late, so now the ability to not go to a ticket kiosk and to use your phone or your card to tap to pay to go through the turnstiles. I mean, what a fabulous advancement in technology. Yeah. And that's, using things that are very non-traditional to 10 years ago, even a year ago.
I mean, I saw that firsthand. We had our Skift Forum Europe earlier this spring, and I used my iPhone to pay for transit tickets in London.
Yes.
And it's just such a seamless experience.
Such a better experience.
Artificial intelligence is one of those terms that's coming up a lot now in the industry. I've heard it mentioned a few times this morning. What role will payment strategy play as artificial intelligence, things like chatbots, you can have these sort of conversations, maybe buy things, play, as travel industry looks into that?
Yeah, artificial intelligence is important to our business in so many ways. One example of some work that we have going on right now is we're working with Aeromexico to create a chatbot experience. So after the initial purchase, the consumer can actually interact with Aeromexico via Facebook Messenger or via WhatsApp. And so the opportunity right before the flight then that Aeromexico is using AI to actually think about, okay, well, like what would this consumer like? Would they like to upgrade their seat? How about they can really pre-select a meal or a drink so that I can have that right at their seat and ready for them? And that all happens in WhatsApp. So again, bringing the experience to where the customer is instead of forcing them to come to a different place. And with card on file, with Apple Pay, they can really seamlessly pay right within that experience. And then if I can just transition over to fraud management, which is huge, right, in this space. So fraud is here. We're not going to avoid it or get away with it or get away from it. But when I think about artificial intelligence and machine learning, we are getting smarter and smarter every single day. And with the application and combination of that and rules management, we're helping to get better and really kind of change the conversation, not just from fraud mitigation to really to authorization maximization. And I think what's super interesting about that is that fraud is a big deal, but we're missing the mark in terms of really talking about missed transactions on the front end, and that's what we're here to help our customers do.
Yeah, well, and travel is such a complicated system when it comes to payments, right? You know, you have people buying purchases across borders, and you don't necessarily know. It's maybe the first time they've worked with a company. So there's a lot of complexity there that it seems like AI or machine learning can help, you know, figure out when it comes to fraud situations.
That's right, and that's why you do work with a partner, you know, like ourselves and others in the industry that do this, is that working within your own ecosystem of data is limited. And so what you have to do is to get into that total data universe where you're looking at billions and billions of transactions a day so that you can see the trends and the patterns. And we know those actors through AI, and we can understand better to tell our partners whether that's a good transaction or not.
Well, Michelle, there's so many other areas we talk about, but I think that wraps it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.